You may not realize it, but every time you stretch out of bed, reach for something on a shelf, or walk to the kitchen, your body is negotiating with time. And for people over the age of 60, the outcome of that negotiation depends not on how much you do, but what you choose to do. One seemingly innocent exercise could chip away at your independence. Another might quietly be adding years to your life. This is a story about those choices and how one man, named Walter, learned to choose wisely. The 3 exercises you should never do after 60. 1. High-impact running. Walter had always found peace in the rhythm of his steps. For decades, running had been his companion, through career changes, family milestones, and even the quiet days of retirement. At 72, he still laced up his sneakers every morning and set out on his familiar 3-mile route around the neighborhood. It gave him a sense of youth, of control, and of continuity in a world that had slowly begun to change around him. But one cold morning, that familiar route betrayed him. A small crack in the sidewalk, one he'd passed dozens of times before, caught the toe of his shoe. In a blink, he was on the ground. The pain was sharp, immediate. A broken wrist, bruised ribs. But what lingered more than the physical pain was the fear that crept in afterward. It was the first time Walter questioned whether his body could still do what his heart wanted. Weeks later, during a physical therapy session, Walter finally voiced his doubt. His therapist, kind but firm, told him what he had begun to fear. High-impact running may no longer be safe for your age. Walter was stunned. Running had always been good for him. How could it now be dangerous? But the facts are hard to ignore. As we age, our bones lose density, becoming more brittle and prone to fractures. Joints that once cushioned each step now struggled to absorb shock. And the body's natural sense of balance, what doctors call proprioception, diminishes over time, making stumbles more frequent and falls more severe. Every footfall on the hard pavement was no longer just exercise. It was impact. Impact that echoed through his knees, climbed into his hips, and settled into his lower back. He began to notice aches he used to ignore. Slower recoveries. Hesitation before each run. Running, once a lifeline to vitality, had quietly become a risk. Walter wasn't just nursing injuries. He was nursing the loss of something he loved. But it was also the beginning of something new. A question had been planted in his mind. If not this, then what? The journey wasn't over. It was just time for a new path. 2. Heavy weight lifting. Walter had always admired his neighbor, George, a former firefighter. George was the kind of man who never backed down from challenge. Even in retirement, he kept that same spirit alive, especially in his garage, where he'd built a small home gym filled with weights, kettlebells, and old memories of strength. George was proud of his routine. He believed staying strong meant staying young. But one morning, everything changed. While attempting a heavy deadlift, something he'd done countless times before, George felt a sharp, searing pain shoot down his back. He dropped the weight immediately. Within hours, he couldn't stand straight. Doctors later confirmed he had slipped a disc in his lower back. What followed was a painful surgery and months of slow, frustrating recovery. Walter watched all of this unfold. He visited George often, saw his once active friend now confined to a recliner, relying on a walker just to get to the kitchen. It was a sobering sight. As we age, our bodies quietly change. Tendons lose their elasticity. Bones become more brittle. And while the mind may still feel youthful, the body simply isn't built for the same strain it once was. For seniors, lifting heavy weights doesn't just carry risk, it can threaten independence. One wrong move, one moment of overconfidence, and the recovery can take months, if not years. Walter took the lesson to heart. He cleared out the heavy weights from his own garage. In their place, he brought in resistance bands, light dumbbells, and a yoga mat. His new focus wasn't about building bulk, it was about maintaining movement, balance, and confidence. He started with simple stretches, light resistance training, and exercises that kept his joints healthy and his heart steady. Now, every morning, Walter opens his garage door, lets the sun in, and moves through his routine slowly, thoughtfully. No strain, no pain, just motion and breath. He still thinks of George, and every time he stretches or picks up a resistance band, he remembers that strength in later life doesn't come from lifting heavier. It comes from lifting smarter. Part 3. Plyometric exercises, jumping, burpees, box jumps. Walter had always been active. In his younger years, he ran marathons, played tennis every weekend, and even tried skiing in his 50s. So when he visited his teenage grandson one Saturday afternoon and saw him doing jump squats in the backyard, Walter felt a familiar spark, that urge to move, to prove he still had it. "Mind if I try a few?" he asked with a chuckle. His grandson smiled and nodded. Walter bent his knees, pushed off the ground, and landed. Once, twice, but on the third jump, something went wrong. His foot didn't land quite right. He stumbled backward, arms flailing, and caught himself just before hitting the ground. No broken bones. No twisted ankle. Just a slightly bruised ego and a heavy realization. His body wasn't 25 anymore. It wasn't even 55. It was 71, and that meant things had changed. Walter sat on the porch afterward, a quiet worry settling in. He hadn't thought much about it before, but that small scare reminded him. Movements that once felt natural now carried real risk. Plyometric exercises, jumping, burpees, box jumps, are designed for explosive power. They're intense, demanding, and fast. But for aging joints, brittle bones, and slower reflexes, they can be dangerous. The Centers for Disease Control, CDC, has long reported that falls are the leading cause of injury and death for older adults. A misstep isn't just a misstep anymore. It could mean a torn tendon, a hip fracture, or months of painful recovery. Walter didn't want to stop moving, but he knew he needed to move differently. With guidance from a physical therapist, he began learning exercises that respected his body's current state. Controlled movements, stability training, low-impact routines that built strength without the shock. He replaced box jumps with step-ups, swapped burpees for gentle yoga flows. Instead of chasing his past pace, he focused on sustainable movement that would carry him not for one workout, but for years to come. Now, every time Walter exercises, he does so with intention. Not to compete with his grandson, but to stay strong enough to watch him grow up. Not to prove he can still jump high, but to make sure he can still walk steadily, confidently, and safely. And that, he's learned, is a goal worth striving for. The 3 exercises you must do to stay independent. 1. Brisk walking. Every morning, Walter walks. He doesn't shuffle. He doesn't race. He walks with purpose, steady, determined. Just fast enough to feel his heart working, his breath deepening, but never out of control. Rain or shine, he laces up his worn sneakers and sets off down the quiet streets of his neighborhood. Walter is 72. He wasn't always this disciplined. A few years ago, after a minor heart scare, he sat in his doctor's office, overwhelmed. Words like cholesterol, blood pressure, and risk factors buzzed around him like flies. He felt his age. He felt powerless, and that scared him more than anything. Then his doctor said something simple: start walking. Every day. Not slowly, walk like you mean it. So Walter did. Just 30 minutes. At first, his legs ached. His back complained. Some mornings, he wanted to stay in bed. But the walking got easier. Then it became routine. And now, it's something he looks forward to. It clears his mind. It lifts his mood. He greets the same old man tending roses 3 blocks down. He waves at the paper boy. He watches the seasons change, step by step. And it's working. Harvard research says brisk walking can reduce the risk of death by over 40%. Walter didn't need a study to tell him that, but it helps to know. His heart is stronger. His bones feel more stable. He forgets less. He laughs more. He's not trying to run a marathon. He just wants to be here, to watch his granddaughter graduate, to keep his independence, to live fully in whatever time he has left. Walking gave him that. It's simple. It's free. And for Walter, it's life-changing. 2. Balance training. Walter used to be afraid of falling. It started after he tripped over the edge of a rug in his hallway. Nothing serious happened, just a scraped knee and a bruised ego, but the fear stayed with him. He found himself hesitating at curbs. He reached for walls as he walked. He even stopped going on his evening walks, the ones he used to enjoy so much. That fear of falling began to shrink his world. Then one evening, Walter heard something that caught his attention. 1 in 4 adults over 65 falls each year. It was a fact shared by the National Council on Aging. But what stood out more was this: balance training can reduce the risk of falling by up to 37%. That night, Walter decided to make a change. Now, every evening, just before dinner, Walter spends 10 minutes working on his balance. He starts by standing on one leg, steadying himself with the back of a chair if needed. Then he walks heel to toe across the room, slowly, carefully. Some evenings, he adds gentle Tai Chi movements, breathing deeply and letting his body flow from one motion to the next. At first, it was hard. His legs felt shaky. His confidence was low, but he stuck with it. Week by week, he noticed something. His steps grew steadier. He stopped reaching for walls. The fear began to fade. Now, Walter moves through his days with more certainty. He goes on walks again. He doesn't think twice when stepping over a curb. Balance training didn't just help him avoid a fall. It helped him take his life back. And all it took was 10 minutes a day. 3. Light strength training. Twice a week, Walter makes his way to the back porch just after breakfast. The sun is soft, the air is still cool. In one hand, he carries a simple pair of resistance bands. Not weights, not machines, just bands. Nothing fancy. But for Walter, these bands are a quiet rebellion against aging. At 72, Walter doesn't care about looking strong. He cares about being strong. Strong enough to carry the groceries from his car without calling his daughter. Strong enough to stand up from his favorite armchair without that familiar, awkward struggle. Strong enough to keep his balance when the floor feels a little slippery after a shower. He starts slowly, a few gentle stretches. Then with focused breath and steady hands, he works his arms, pull, release. Then his legs, step, press. Then his core, tighten, hold. No grunting, no strain, just quiet determination. Walter doesn't do this to chase youth. He does it to protect the independence he still has. And it works. The Journal of Aging and Physical Activity reports that light strength training, not the kind that breaks your back, but the kind that supports it, helps improve muscle mass, balance, and even memory. That means fewer falls, fewer forgotten names, more days of living on your own terms. It's not about lifting heavy, it's about lifting smart. And for Walter, that makes all the difference. The choice is yours. Walter never thought much about growing old until it caught up with him. He used to be the one helping others up the stairs, the one carrying groceries with one hand, the one who didn't give a second thought to walking 5 blocks in the rain. But as the years crept in, so did the quiet signals. Knees that groaned, a back that stiffened each morning, balance that wasn't what it used to be. At first, he tried to push through. He thought slowing down meant weakness, that resting meant giving up. But one morning, after a simple fall left him staring at the ceiling of his kitchen, Walter saw things differently. He didn't just fall, he had ignored the signs. His body had been whispering for years. He just hadn't been listening. That fall was a wake-up call, not just about injury, but about independence, about what it really means to age with dignity. So Walter made a decision, not to be young again, not to be faster or stronger, but to be wiser. He began learning how to move in a way that worked with his body, not against it. He swapped his old routines for exercises designed for stability, strength, and gentle flexibility. Movements that respected his age, but didn't limit his life. And something unexpected happened. He didn't just avoid further injury. He regained energy, confidence, freedom. He could walk to the park again, tend his garden, carry his granddaughter without fear of losing balance. The joy returned, not because he turned back time, but because he adapted to it. Walter now knows aging doesn't mean giving up. It means choosing differently, choosing wisely. But not everyone makes that choice in time. Too many still hold on to routines from their younger years, ignoring the needs of the body they have today. And the cost can be high. pain, falls, immobility, or becoming dependent on others. So now it's your turn. Take a moment. Ask yourself, what movements are you still doing that no longer serve you? And what are you doing today to protect your independence tomorrow? Because the future doesn't come all at once. It comes step by step, breath by breath. And every choice you make now is a step toward the life you want, or away from it. If this story speaks to you, comment 1 below. If it doesn't, let us know how it can better serve you. And remember, you're not alone in this journey. Subscribe for honest, practical guidance, not just to live longer, but to live better, on your own terms.